Estonia etogost ketri ni nyanato pestuniet yanivka. Inspiration is a guest that is not willing to visit the lazy. Pyotr Ilyich Tchaikovsky was born in the Voskit, a small town in the Volska Governorate, present-day Udamatrina, in the Russian Empire, into a family of long line of military service. His father, Ilyich Tchaikovsky, was a lieutenant colonel and engineer in the Department of Mines, and would manage the Kamsko-Volushky Iron Works. His grandfather, Pyotr Fedorovich Tchaikovsky, or Nin Pyotr Fedorovich Czechia, served as a physician assistant in the army and later the city government of Galushka in Vyatka. His great-great-grandfather was a Ukrainian Cossack named Fyodor Chikina. According to Tchaikovsky, the derivative of the Ukrainian family's name, Chika, was seagull in Ukraine. He distinguished himself under Peter the Great in the Battle of Portovnia in 1709. Tchaikovsky's mother, Alexandra Alevina, or Nini Anastasia, was the second of Liana's three wives, 18 years her husband's junior and French to the father's side. Both Iliana and Alexander were trained in the arts, including music, a necessity, and deposing into a remote area in Russia also meant the need for entertainment, whether in private or social gatherings. His other six siblings, Tchaikovsky was close to his sister Alexandra, the twin brothers Antonia and Modest. Alexandra marries Tule of Dianyodie, who produced 7 children to lead to Tchaikovsky in the only real family member who was known as the adult, especially during his years of wandering, and those children, Vladimir Dianyodka, would also be composers named Bob, who would be very close to him. In 1884, his family hired Franine Dushbach, a 22-year-old French governess. 4.5-year-old Tchaikovsky was initially taught too young to study alongside the older brother of Nikolai and Denise of the family. His insistence convinced his Jones brothers otherwise. At the age of 6, he became fluent in French and German. Tchaikovsky would also be attached to young women. His affection for other people thought that his mother actually distanced and adopted her son. Dunblanc saved many of Tchaikovsky's work from this period, including his earliest known compositions, and became a source of several childhood anecdotes. Tchaikovsky also began playing the piano at 5 as well, and he also tried in the orchestrina, a former organ and barrel organ. On June 10, 1858, the 19-year-old Tchaikovsky graduated as a Chiller Consular, a long run of civil servants, and appointed to the Minister of Justice. He became a junior assistant within 6 months and a senior assistant 2 months after that. He remained senior assistant for the rest of the 3-year civil servant career. Meanwhile, the Russian Music Society, the RMS, was founded in 1859 by the Grand Duchess Elena Pavlovna, a German-born aunt to Tsar Alexander II, and his protege, pianist and composer Anton Rubinstein. Previous czars and the aristocrats focused almost exclusively on importing European talent. The aim of the RMS was to fill Alexander II's wish to foster native talent. He hosted regular seasons and public competitions and concerts. They were previously only held on the 6 weeks of Lent, and the imperial theatres were closed after Lent, which is basically Easter Lent. He also had like a boy band of the 1816, which were called the Five. In 1856, while Tchaikovsky was still at school in the school of Jurisprudence, and Alex Rubinstein was actually lobbying the aristocrats for more autonomy and more funds for the RMS. Critics Vladimir Stanstov, the 18-year-old pianist Mikhail Budavinya, and the national pianist agreed on the Russian Music Society, one that would take the operas to Mikhail Yanka as the model and incorporate elements of folk music, rejected traditional Western practices, and used exotic harmonic devices such as the whole tone or the tonic scale. They saw Western style and conservancies as unnecessary and antipathetic to foster native talent. Eventually, Baraka, Caesar Kul, Madiskira, Nikolai Ramsey Konuska, and Alexander Bodin became Bravil, and the later Morsogan attacked the Russian Rubinstein. Tchaikovsky and his fellow conservative students were also caught in the crossfire of this debate. While ambivalent, much of the Music's Five, Tchaikovsky remained friendly terms with most of the members. In 1869, he became friends with Balintkorev, who worked together on what would be the second symphony titled Little Russian. Despite their support, Tchaikovsky also considered efforts to ensure his musical independence from the group, as well as the conservatism factors and the St. Petersburg conservatories. People sometimes say that he's probably a homosexual and the Soviets actually tried anew efforts to cover up himself for same-sex attractions and portrayed him as a homosexual to make the efforts of the armchair analysis by the Western biographies. Biographers were generally agreed to the Tchaikovskys were homosexual. He sought the company of other men in his circle for extended periods of time, associating openly and establishing professional connections with them. However, the degree of which the composers might have felt comfortable with his sexual nature has remained open to debate. It is still unknown whether Tchaikovsky is homosexual or heterosexual, but he did marry Antona on their honeymoon, so more than likely it could be bisexuality, but this is about the music. But there you go, this is his personal life. He actually went away on his honeymoon and actually returned to Russia when Alexander III was in charge. So, Tchaikovsky had many works, but his notable overtune of 1912, Romeo and Juliet, and the famous Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, and The Nutcracker, and probably The Marching Slave. The March Slave was pretty good as well. And he knew some violin cornetto for the last three of his 6 numbered symphonies, and his operas, The Queen of Spades, Your Green Organ, were among the most familiar places for the actual. He displayed an unusual wild style and emotional range, from saloon works to unconscious charm to the symphonies of tremendous depth, power, and gratitude. Some of his works, such as the Valentines of Local Team, include a poised, casual, and classical from Renaissance of the 18th century composers of Mozart, his famous composer, he said. Other composers, such as the Little Russian Symphony and the opera Volokul the Smith, flirt with musical practices more akin to those of the Five, especially with the use of folk songs. Other works, such as Tchaikovsky's last 3 symphonies, employed a personal music idiom and the fatality and the intense emotional expression of Tchaikovsky. Tchaikovsky did go back to Ukraine before his death in 1864 to 1869 to rekindle with most of his family from the Ukraine, and he also did a performance there, the Kiev Opera House, in 1890, and he also did one in Kiev, Odessa as well, and Kieva. Big music man, but he did a lot of operas in 1-2 tone and 1-3-4, and he also did his musical scale from up, down, up, C, D, E, C, and C, E, D, D were his most widely used patterns of his most famous compositions. His musical influences were obviously Leon Baston, Mozart, Rowley John Wiley, Gassili, The Little Tsar, George Brits, Jaffan Raff, and Adolf Adam, Hector Blischgon, Felix Maddensteinstone, and Gelikom Meinenbeer, and Larry Lichthoff. Most of them were German, because Germans and the Austro-Hungarians has the best music composers. Of course, the Blue Danube. Who doesn't know the Blue Danube? Even if you're not into classical music, you heard it once in a film. He had a lot of critics and a lot of critical reception, but some critics hated him for his musical range, others loved him for his musical range. Other foreign people were kind of biased and didn't care for his music, such as Eduard Hanslick, which was Austrian actually. Hanslick was actually Austrian, and the violin cornetto and the music compositions who stink, that one could hear him stink. While the William Foster Abtrop wrote the 5th Symphony, the furious penetration sound was nothing like I have ever heard before, as I heard of demons struggling to turn a brandy, the music growing drunker and drunker, pandemonium, delirium, tantrums, raving, and above all, noise, worse than confound. So a lot of people didn't love Tchaikovsky, but that was the critics of the day. But today he is regarded as the greatest Russian composer of them all. He became the first full-time professional Russian composer. He is widely known for The Nutcracker, Swan Lake, The Black Swan, Sleeping Beauty, Little Russian, and of course his other ballads before his death. And of course, in October 1893, Tchaikovsky was to conduct a premiere of the Sixth Symphony, De Pyotr in St. Petersburg. 9 days later, Tchaikovsky died at the age of 53. He was interred to Kiev Cemetery and the Alexander Nevsky Memorial and the Monastery, near the graves of the fellow composers of Alexander Bordin, Mikhail Galika, and Modest Mugatsky. Later, Ramsky, Kolova, and Boleky were also buried nearby, additionally attributed to cholera from drinking unboiled water in a local restaurant. One story accounts many writers have theorized that his death was actually a suicide. Opinions have been summarized the following. The polemics over Tchaikovsky's death has reached so much in past. Rumors attached to the famous Die Hard from illness, probably from the evidence of little hope of sacrifice, often of little hope of satisfactory resolution. The state of diagnosis, the confusion of witness, disagree, and the long-term efforts of smoking and alcohol. We did not know how Tchaikovsky died, and we may never know. And that is the story of the man who made the Nutcracker, my friends. I don't know, just thought I'd throw together this Christmas special for you all. I hope you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. But I hope you do like it. And Merry Christmas. And a Happy New Year. Britain, Austria, Hungary, Ottoman Empire, and the German Empire. Let's go. 1 year. I may stream the first and basically answer all the questions that you have, or just talk to myself and answer everyone's questions that's probably not on your mind, but we'll talk about that January the 1st, January the 2nd, hopefully. Good luck, and I'll see you next time. Later, my friends. And remember, inspiration is a guest who is not willing to visit the impatient. And of course, truly there would be a reason to go mad were there not for music. Oh yeah, and then I forgot, why would they do this? This is not related to World War I. Where's the Christmas truce? Or Christmas battles of Riga? Or even something from World War II. We haven't done World War II in a while. But the reason is, why I've done the Nutcracker and Pyotr Tchaikovsky is because, the big reason, here we go. I remember this review from years ago. Alright, this is afterthought. I remember a review from years ago talking about the Nutcracker. I remember his name, Bob, or something like that. He did movie reviews. And I was like, you know what, let's do, this is a history channel. I know we're in World War I right now, but 1893 is not too far away from World War I, is it? I mean, like 14 years tops. 20 years on top. Like, give or take, actually 10 years tops, yeah, 10 years, 1984 to 1914, 10 years, so not too bad. And probably he could have suicided, so he could have lived to 1900, but let's not go on that. Hope you enjoyed. The only reason I did this was for that, so yeah. Alright, later guys. 1 minute, cool.